On starry nights when the moon is full and the air still, you can hear the sounds of faraway ships and distant laughter. They echo over the hills and through the valley, down calm canals and sleepy inlets. Every engine knows that these are the sounds that say the harbour is hard at work at the big station by the sea. One night, a special load of fish was ordered. The Fat Controller decided that extra vans must be added to the train that the men called the Flying Kipper. The only vans available were old ones. They had not been used for a long time. Henry waited impatiently by the quayside as Duck shunted them into position. Thomas puffed by with the mail train. Hello, Duck. Going fishing? I'd take care if I were you. Why? Huffed Duck. Well, for one thing, puffed Thomas, remembering his own experience, if fish get into an engine's boiler, they always cause trouble. And for another, fish can be awfully smelly, and I know what I'm talking about. Good night. Henry grunted dreadfully. You'll just have to put up with it, Henry, said his driver. At least the extra load will mean you can have another engine help us up Gordon's Hill. Meanwhile, Duck was waiting at Edward's station so that he could help the heavy train by pushing from behind. Henry made good progress. When they reached Edward's station, his driver stopped the train beyond the platform. Then Henry gave a special signal. Beep, 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 beep. I need help, please. Beep, beep, replied Duck. I shan't be long. Duck buffered gently up to Henry's train. He was not coupled on. Henry would then be able to run on without stopping when they reached the top of the hill. Ready, whistled Duck. And off they set. Soon they reached Gordon's Hill. Push hard, puffed Henry. We're doing it, replied Duck. Henry was pulling his train harder than he realized. Duck felt the weight on his buffers slacken. Then Duck noticed something else. There's no sign of a tail lamp, he puffed. He whistled, but there was no reply. Meanwhile, Henry had noticed something too. My train's getting heavier, he thought to himself. I'm slowing down. Then there was trouble. No one was hurt, but a strong smell of fish hung in the air. Next day, workmen found a broken tail lamp at the bottom of the hill. The Fat Controller spoke kindly to Duck. The accident wasn't your fault. We should have checked that this tail lamp was fixed on properly. We'll soon have you in working order again. Thank you, sir, said Duck sadly. Thomas told me to be careful about fish. They got me in a right pickle, didn't they? Toby the tram engine was very excited. He was wearing a brand new bell that shone like gold. He was off to the seaside. His driver was explaining everything as they puffed along the line. There's a seaside village near here, and every year they have a big parade with a special attraction for all the visitors. This year, Toby, you're the special attraction. Thank you, sir, said Toby. But what does a special attraction do? Oh, just smiles and blows whistles at everyone, replied his driver. We're almost there, listen. You can hear the seagulls. Soon they reached the little station by the village. But instead of a big welcome, there was just one man. He whispered to Toby's driver and turned sadly away. Well, if that doesn't take the biscuit, said Toby's driver. They've run out of room in the parade and don't need a special attraction after all. We've got to go home, Toby. I'm sorry, old boy. So am I, sighed Toby. Percy was shunting in the yard. He didn't expect to see Toby. What are you doing back so soon? Before Toby could reply, the fat controller arrived. Leave these trucks here, please, Percy. There's an emergency at the harbour. Come on, Percy, said his driver. This'll be trouble with Bulstrode. Who's Bulstrode? Wondered Percy. He was still surprised about Toby, and now he had two puzzles to sort out. His driver explained. Bulstrode is a disagreeable barge. He never stops complaining. His driver was right about Bulstrode. Today the barge was more bad-tempered than ever. Come on, why aren't you trucks where you should be? There's no engine and we can only go where we're put, shouted the trucks. You're in the wrong place, not us. When Percy arrived, Bulstrode was sulking and the trucks were crosser still. Our stone is for Bulstrode. Please, put us in a siding so that we can load him up and be rid of him. But the trucks were being careless. As Percy was lining them up, they burst through some buffers. Help! Help! They wailed. But it was too late. Cried Bulstrode. I'm sinking! Serves you right, giggled the trucks. You were always barging in and moaning. It took a very long time to clear the mess. Percy watched as Bulstrode was towed to the beach. There you are, said the workman. Now you can just stay here. Children can play in you all day, and at long last you'll be useful. When Percy got home, he and Toby exchanged all their news. Well, we've both had some seaside surprises today, laughed Toby. But driver says that I'm a special attraction anyway, and so are you. Every time we go on our own line. What do you mean? Asked Percy. Well, all we have to do is smile and blow whistles at everyone. If one morning you were to ride in Bertie the bus, you would run down the winding country road with him, cross over stone wall bridges and travel past Thomas's branch line. Then you would hear Bertie's friendly greeting as he sees one of his friends pass by. His name is Tom Tipper the postman. Every day, Tom trundles cheerfully around the Island of Sodor. He stops at stations collecting letters and parcels from Thomas's and Percy's mail train. Then he delivers the mail to farms and cottages far and wide. The engines know that anywhere their rails won't reach, Tom Tipper will collect their post and deliver it safely come rain or shine. He's always ready to help load mailbags onto the trains too. "Thank you, Tom," whistles Percy. "Yes, indeed," agrees Thomas. "You're a really useful postman." "Ah," replies Tom, "but where would I be without my van? We make a grand pair." One day, Tom wasn't at the platform. A postman they didn't know dumped the bags on the platform and disappeared. "What happened to Tom?" wondered Percy. "And his old van," said his driver. "No wonder the new postman looks cross. Trying to carry mailbags on a bicycle would make anyone miserable." Next morning, the engines were glad to see Tom back again, but he looked very sad. "Postmaster decided my van was too expensive to run. The rounds take longer on my bike. I'm sorry, I can't stop to help you." "I wish I could cheer Tom Tipper up," sighed Percy, the small engine. He was just wondering how this might be done when his thoughts were rudely interrupted. A man was shouting at Tom Tipper. "You've got to come back to the Fat Controller's office. He needs you to sign some important papers right away." "Oh dear," replied Tom Tipper. "This is going to make me later still." He was in a hurry and being careless. He propped his bike against Percy's mail truck and rushed away. "Stop!" cried Percy, but Tom was out of sight. There was worse to come. Percy's driver hadn't seen the bike and he started away. "Oh no!" cried Percy. "Now there'll be trouble." And there was. Percy's driver quickly stopped the train. Everyone came running to the scene. Tom Tipper's bicycle was in pieces. "I'm sorry, Mr. Tipper," apologised Percy. "Never mind, Percy," said the postman. "It wasn't your fault, but now I've only got my legs to get the mail delivered." Whatever will happen next, Tom Tipper soon found out. Next day, he was waiting happily for Percy. "Beep, beep," whistled Percy. "Is that a smart new van I see?" "It is indeed. That accident did me a good turn, Percy. My chief decided a new van would do the job. Much better than another bike and worth the expense. Now, I can always be on time again." "So I did help," beamed Percy. "But by accident, as you might say." Thomas and Percy enjoy working in the docks. They like the sea air and the sound of the gulls. But one day the friends were feeling hot and bothered. A crane was causing trouble. His name is Cranky, and this was his first day at the docks. "You're useless little bugs," he called from above. "If you put these trucks on the inside lines, then I wouldn't have so far to travel." "Rubbish," said Thomas. "We always arrange our trucks like this, and no crane has ever complained before." "Well, I'm complaining now." And Cranky banged his load down on the quayside. Later, the two engines met Gordon and James and told them about Cranky. "Cranes are airy-fairy things. They need a lot of attention, like me, in fact," said Gordon. "You should see the situation from Cranky's point of view," huffed James. "He's high up in the air, coping with wind, rain and baking sun. Then he looks down and sees you two little engines being annoying. No wonder he called you bugs." When Cranky heard that the big engines agreed with him, he grew bossier still. Come on, push those trucks closer to me.
But Percy was too upset to concentrate and pushed the trucks too far. Poor Percy. Then, Cranky played a trick on Thomas. "Push your trucks onto the outside line. It's easier for me to load up." So Thomas did. But Cranky left the loads beside the trucks, not in them. "You must have known my arm can't reach you there," complained Cranky. This mix-up caused confusion and delay. The Fat Controller was most upset. "Thomas and Percy, this new crane has an important job to do. I have heard that you have not been helping him today. You will go to your sheds and consider how you will improve yourselves tomorrow." Now, Thomas and Percy were upset too. That evening, a big storm raged across the island. Cranky and the big engines were trapped at the docks. "We're sure to be safe in this shed," said Duck. But he was wrong. The engines had no idea that they were about to be put in great danger by an old tramp steamer. It was out of control and running aground straight into the sheds. Called the engines from inside the shed. "I can't," called Cranky pathetically. When the storm was over, the Fat Controller rushed to the scene of destruction. "Thomas and Percy will help you," he called to Cranky, "and then you can help the engines." "Oh, please, hurry," cried Cranky, "and tell them I'm sorry I was rude to them." "So it was you," murmured the Fat Controller. "I owe those engines an apology." Thomas and Percy soon came to the rescue. And it wasn't too long before Cranky was upright again and clearing the wreckage. At last, all the engines were free. "Oh, thank you," said Gordon. "What would I have done without you?" "Well, I had to be rescued before I could help you. But I never thought it would be by a couple of Cranky was about to say bugs, but he quickly corrected himself. Small engines, thank you. I'll never be rude again. However, you two mites are in my way, so move over." "Pah," said Percy. "He's back to bugging us." "Don't move. You're still attached to Cranky." But it was too late. Cranky still looks down on the two little engines. But ever since that stormy night, he never calls them bugs or mites because he knows they may bite back. It was a busy time at the docks. All the engines were working hard, pushing and pulling trucks about. One morning, Percy was late. Cranky the crane was quick to criticize. "These ships can't be kept waiting. They have important cargo. If they miss the tides, they will be delayed in the docks. You should look up to ships and show more respect. You are, after all, only little." "We've got too much work," huffed Percy. "Then perhaps a lorry should do your job." Percy was shocked. He told the other engines what Cranky had said. "Stuff and nonsense," snorted James. "We engines run this island," said Henry. "What if a lorry does arrive?" I'm afraid it did, along with two more. Cranky was delighted. "Hey, you down there! Your job's done now. These lorries are taking over. One of them wants to talk to you." The lorry was very rude. "What's that steaming lump of scrap iron doing here? Be off with you." "Scrap iron? Steaming scrap iron? Pah!" A little later, Percy met up with Thomas and James. Another lorry was being rude to them. Then he saw Percy. "Oh, look. It's a little green goblin on wheels. You'll be scrapped. Just you wait and see." "Well, bust my boiler, what a horrid lorry!" exclaimed Thomas. "Despicable," agreed James. The next engine to meet a lorry was Toby.
Well, well, well. No wonder this railway's in a mess. You belong in a museum, not working in a quarry.
I might look old, but I'm very useful.
Useful, Pa, replied the lorry. Just you toodle off.
Toodle, spluttered Toby. Come along, Toby, interrupted his driver. Don't bother to argue with him. We'll go to the flour mill instead. But when they arrived at the flour mill, Toby was shocked to see yet another lorry. What are you doing here?
We free are doing your work now. You're too slow.
The foreman spoke to Toby's driver. I'm sorry, times are a-changing, I'm afraid. Toby might be old, replied his driver, but he's reliable. Come on, Toby, we'll go to the farms. They'll still use us. Toby trundled sadly away. His railway ran through a narrow gorge, but vehicles had to tackle a steep and dangerous road. When Toby arrived, he saw the lorry from the quarry again. It was loaded with rock. That lorry's in trouble, thought Toby. And he was. The driver was thrown clear. Rotten roads, he muttered. The wrecked lorry was taken to the docks. Percy looked at the lorry. What's this lump of steaming scrap iron? He teased.
I'll be back, replied the lorry, so you can wipe that silly smile off your smoke box.
Pa, said Percy, and wheeshed him loudly. Then Butch, the breakdown vehicle, arrived. He was towing the lorry from the flour mill. What happened? Asked Toby's driver. He was overloaded with flour, came the reply, and he broke down. Not very useful now, are you? Said Toby. Grrr, replied the lorries. Then James whistled excitedly. They're bringing in the third lorry on a barge. What happened to that one? James asked. Stupid lorry was reversing and fell straight into the sea, said the tow truck man. Later, Thomas arrived. He looked at the three lorries and laughed. Well, 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 the brothers Grimm, smashed, broken and sunk. The lorries didn't return, and the engines now work even harder to make sure they never will. Gordon was feeling grumpy. This was making James cross. Why are you complaining all the time? Because I'm a big blue engine and I know everything. I shall complain whenever I want. You're just a small red engine with ideas above your station. I can't see any, said Percy. Where are they? Any what? Ideas above the station. The sky is empty. Like your smoke box, Percy, laughed James. But Gordon was still grumpy. One day I'll show you just what a big engine can really do. So what can a big engine really do? Not speak to silly little green engines for a start, replied Gordon, and he puffed away. Later that day, the Fat Controller came to see him. Gordon, you'll be making one stop today with an empty express to test our new station. You can make up time afterwards. Why can't Henry do it? He likes idling in stations. You will do as you are told, came the blunt reply. So Gordon did. But he was still unhappy, and he grew sick too. I just can't get up to speed, he moaned. It's time for your visit to the works. Your pipes are clogged, said the fireman. At last they approached the new station. Gordon was impressed, but his mood soon changed. In front of him was a blank wall and huge buffers. What a boring view, he grunted. Important engines like me should have a panoramic view, where I can see people and people can see me. And he wheezed angrily. Gordon was happy when it was time to leave. Now you really can enjoy your run, as long as your pipes will let you, said his driver. Come on, I can go faster than this, huffed Gordon. Sick? Me? Never. But Gordon began to feel more and more feeble, and soon he came to a complete stop. "What happened?" he exclaimed. His driver and fireman inspected him. "Something's broken inside you, Gordon," said his fireman. "Now you really will have to go to the works." Gordon was still fuming when James arrived to collect his coaches. Well, so much for knowing about everything. You got too puffed up in your boiler, so it serves you right." When Gordon returned from the works a few days later, he was still boasting. "I am the finest engine on the island of Sodor, probably the finest in the world." "Come on, Gordon, we're going to the official opening of the new station." Then there was trouble. As Gordon approached the new station, neither the driver or fireman could apply his brakes. Something had jammed. The driver reduced steam, but Gordon was still going too fast. "Help me, please!" "Well, Gordon," said the Fat Controller, "I knew you wanted a panoramic view, but this is not the way to achieve it." "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir," muttered Gordon. When Gordon was repaired again, he took the Fat Controller to the new station for its second official opening. This time he arrived safely, and everyone clapped and cheered as he pulled in. The Fat Controller spoke to him. "Your panoramic view is here to stay. I trust you will always see through it from the safety of your own rails." Gordon heartily agreed. One summer's day, Thomas and Percy were idling in the station when Bertie the bus arrived. "Have you noticed something?" said Bertie. "What sort of something?" asked Thomas. "The Fat Controller. He seems different," replied Bertie. "I did see him staring at the clouds this morning," said Percy. "I wonder why." The reason was simple. It was Lady Hatt's birthday, and Sir Topham had a new outfit. "It's perfect for my birthday party," said his wife. "You'll look splendid, Topham, dear." "And I'll wear my finest hat just for you," he replied. "Your birthday is a great occasion." "It is, so don't be late." "Don't worry, my dear. I shall be spick and span and right on time." Later that day, the Fat Controller had changed into his new suit. "You look fine, sir," said the station master. "You'd best be going." "Indeed," agreed the Fat Controller. "The engines are busy. I'll take care." "Is it reliable?" asked the station master. "Certainly," said the Fat Controller. But it wasn't. As he sped along, he suddenly saw a large hole in the road. He braked hard, but it was too late. "Bother! Now I've got a puncture. If I change my wheel, I'm sure to dirty my suit, and that would never do." Just then, he heard Caroline. "I have to attend my wife's birthday party, and I cannot be late. Please give me a lift." "I'll try, sir." But Caroline didn't like going fast. "I'm hot. My engine will overheat." And it did. "Told you so," said Caroline sadly. "Bother, bother." Then he heard a loud whistle. It was George the steamroller. George was cross when he saw Caroline. "Call yourself a car. You're a disgrace to the road. Find yourself a scrapyard." Caroline spluttered in fury. George's driver was more polite. "Can I be of assistance, sir?" "Only if you can get me to my wife's birthday party," sighed the Fat Controller. "We can take you to Thomas," replied the driver. "He's just down the line." "Much obliged." And they rumbled away. "What about me?" wailed Caroline. "I'll send for help," called the Fat Controller. "Stay there." "That's all I can do." George was enjoying rolling along the lane, but not the Fat Controller. Oil splashed everywhere. Worse was to follow. "Help!" cried George. "Something snapped!" He veered out of control and the Fat Controller landed in a muddy ditch close to where Thomas was taking on water. Bother, bother. Thomas had never seen the Fat Controller in such a mess. "Can I help you, sir?" asked Thomas's driver. "Yes, please. Get me to the station as fast as you can." "I'm afraid our fireman's been taken ill." "Then I'll be your fireman," sighed the Fat Controller. Thomas was excited. The Fat Controller had to work hard. Coal dust and smut flew everywhere. And at last they reached the station. The Fat Controller looked at the clock. "Just in time," he gasped. He hurriedly picked up a huge bunch of flowers. "Good luck," called Thomas. The Fat Controller's wife was waiting for him. As the clock struck 3, there stood Sir Topham Hatt, tired but triumphant. He gave his wife the flowers. "Well, thank you, my dear. I knew this was a special birthday party, but I didn't know it was fancy dress." Everyone laughed. And then the party began. Thomas the Tank Engine had been working in the coal yards all day. The little blue engine was covered in coal dust. "We can't clean you up tonight, Thomas," said his driver. "There's a problem with the hose pipe." "Bother," said Thomas. "A bath would make me feel much better. The others are sure to say I look silly." But the engines were too busy arguing to notice Thomas. James was talking loudest of all. "I deserve a new coat of paint. The Fat Controller says I'm the pride of the line and—" "Rubbish," huffed Henry. "We're all the pride of the line." "It's been like this all day," confided Percy to Thomas. "James is getting a new coat of paint and won't stop boasting about it." "Why, James? I'm the one who needs a new coat. Look at me." "I'd rather not," retorted James. "You're not a pleasant sight and wouldn't understand the needs of a really important engine." Thomas was fuming. Next morning, as James was being repainted, Henry had an accident. "If you can't push trucks properly, Henry, why not talk to a tree instead? You know how much you like the forest." "As a matter of fact, Bossy Boiler, the Fat Controller is inspecting the island for trees that are too close to the line. He's worried they might cause trouble." "Pah!" laughed James. "If I came upon a tree, I'd just push it aside." "Really?" replied Henry. Soon James was showing off his paintwork. "Make way for an important engine." "You wouldn't feel important if one of these trees crashed on you. You'd feel hurt," reproached Percy. "Rubbish! It wouldn't dare." "You should be careful, James. Trees can be just as powerful as engines," advised Terence. "Pah!" snorted James. "Now excuse me, the Fat Controller needs me to pull the express." And he huffed away. But James was wrong. "You must go to the yards and collect an important goods train, James. It's heavy, so be careful," said the Fat Controller. "But, sir, I've just been repainted. Can't Thomas or Percy do it? They're dirty and like working with trucks." Really useful engines don't argue. So James didn't. By the time he arrived at the yards, the weather had changed for the worse. "Your colour's nice, James. Pity about your face, though," said a truck. James ignored them and set off. Soon they came to a hill and his driver knew that they were in for a difficult time. An old tree close to the track was being blown by the strong winds and rain had weakened the slope. All of a sudden the tree moved. "Ooh, help!" cried James. "Go away!" But of course the tree couldn't. James tried to reverse away from the tree, but his train was too heavy. Then he heard a whistle. "It's Thomas," called his driver. James felt embarrassed and worried that Thomas would laugh at him, but Thomas didn't. He knew that this was no time for teasing. "Beep, beep, I'm ready," whistled Thomas. "So am I," James replied. "As ready as I'll ever be." They were just in time. Later, James spoke to Thomas. "Percy and Terence were right to warn me," he said. "Thank you for rescuing me, Thomas." "Oh, that's all right. We engines must pull together, whatever the weather." Just then, Edward bustled in. "The Fat Controller thinks you're both brave engines. Thomas, you're going to have a new coat of paint, and James, the Fat Controller says that tomorrow you'll pull the Special Express." Everyone was very happy. Early one morning, Gordon's fire would not light. "I don't know what's wrong," sighed the firelighter. "There must be gremlins about." "What are gremlins?" asked Percy. "I've heard they're little green men who play tricks," replied Thomas. "Can we find one?" asked Percy. "Pah," said James. "Gremlins don't exist. They're just an excuse when things go wrong and no one knows why." "If Firelighter says there are gremlins, there are," insisted Thomas. "Huh," snorted James. The Fat Controller had heard everything. "Silence," he said. "I am expecting a VIP, a very important person today. She has heard that all my engines are really useful. Please prove it." "Yes, sir," they all said. "As long as the gremlins let us," added Percy. "What gremlins?" "The ones in Gordon's fire, sir. That's why he's not ready yet." "We'll see about that," thundered the Fat Controller. And he did. "Gordon, I expect you to be on your best behaviour today. You are to pull the very special coach for my special visitor. But no high speeds, please. She won't like that." Gordon was proud and pleased. He was waiting for his special coach when Percy puffed in with some coal trucks. "What's the matter, Gordon? You're late." "Driver says there's gremlins in the turntable," replied Gordon. "They must be everywhere," squeaked Percy. At last the turntable was mended and Gordon puffed away with the special coach. He was soon working hard to make up for lost time. After he arrived at the station, the Fat Controller became concerned. "Where's Thomas?" he wondered. "He's supposed to be bringing my visitor from the docks." "Huh," huffed Gordon. "Thomas isn't really useful if he's late." But it wasn't long before Thomas arrived. "I'm sorry, a cow strayed on the line and we had to wait for the farmer to take her away. But driver says your visitor is here safe and sound." "Indeed she is," smiled the Fat Controller. "How nice to see you." "Who is it?" whispered Percy. "I don't know," replied Thomas, "but the Fat Controller is certainly keen to please her. He's arranged a special party for her." "She's got a dog," said Percy. "Come on, Thomas," said Driver. "You need a drink." "Pah," puffed Gordon. "Thomas is just a lazy little engine. The Fat Controller is expecting me to arrive on time. We're late because of Thomas." Gordon's driver decided to make up for lost time. Then there was trouble. "I think we'd better slow down. This is an old line and could make things uncomfortable for the VIP." And it did. She was taking a bath and the water was slopping about all over the place. "Ooh, ooh, ooh," she cried. Gordon was very relieved to reach his final destination, where Thomas was waiting to collect the Fat Controller and his special visitor. He blew an extra long whistle. This frightened the visitor's dog so much that he fled from the station and ran into a field where a bull was grazing. The bull frightened the little dog even more. He ran back again, onto the platform and over the bridge. didn't stop until he jumped straight into Thomas's cab.
Off off.
But he had a wonderful ride, all the way to the docks. "What's the dog's name?" asked the fireman. "Well, after today's events, I think I'll rename him Gremlin." The Fat Controller chuckled. "In that case, I've met one at last. Ho, ho, ho." "Excuse me, sir, but who is your very important visitor?" "Why, didn't I tell you? This lady is my mother, and she agrees with me you are indeed really useful engines. And my mother, of course, is always right."
Off off.
One day, George the Steamroller was waiting for Percy to take him to a new workplace. George was being rude to Rheneas and Skarloey. "You're just worn-out wheels on worn-out rails. You need rocks for your roads," replied Skarloey, "and we're helping you." "I need to flatten little engines in the scrapyard," retorted George. Then Percy arrived to take George away. He was still rebelling. "Railways are no good. Turn them into roads." The little engines were pleased to see him go. "Rollers are rubbish, so good riddance," they called. George grumbled all the way to the old branch line. He was going to turn it into a road. When they arrived, George was rude again. "Bumpy ride on rotten rails. I'm glad it's over." "So am I," said Percy. "Huh," huffed George. Percy was still fuming when he met Thomas. "What's up, Percy?" "It's George. He makes me feel down." "Just ignore him," puffed Thomas. George was now enjoying himself. "Ripping up rails," he chortled. "What a life!" "What do you think of this, Thomas?" Thomas took no notice. George felt insulted. "You're a useless blue puffed ball," he shouted. But Thomas didn't hear. "I'll show him who's boss." At last the workmen reached the level crossing. "What shall we do here?" "Tear it up, tarmac it," said George. So they did, but not properly, and George knew it too. Later, Thomas was travelling home on the same line. He was pulling trucks filled with vegetables. The signalman had forgotten to warn his driver about the crossing. "That's nice, we don't need to stop," said Thomas happily. "Yes, we do," called his driver, but it was too late. Next day, Percy told Gordon all about George. "Huh!" snorted Gordon. "You're just a small engine, that's why he's rude to you. He wouldn't dare cause me any trouble." George had been taken to some yards to work. As he was chuffering about, Duck arrived with a train of empty trucks. George was blocking his way, and a truck was stuck on the main line. "Let me through," demanded Duck. "I'm too busy. You'll just have to wait." "There's no time to wait. I must clear my trucks from the main line to let Gordon through." "Pah," said George. "Then he'll have to wait too." Duck's driver went to complain to the station master, but the signalman had already switched the points and set the signal to allow Gordon to speed through. His passengers were singing his praises, and he was making express time. "I'm the greatest, just watch me fly by," he whistled long and loud as he approached the station. Suddenly, he saw a truck on the line ahead. "Get out of my way!" But the truck wouldn't move. Until Gordon forced it. By accident. Gordon was worried that the Fat Controller would be cross. He was, but not with Gordon. "Whoever caused this disturbance will have me to answer to." And he did, a few days later. "Look who's here," said Thomas. George had been found out by the Fat Controller and punished. He looked miserable. Now we'll get some peace at last, said Percy. I want to get rolling again, but I've got to wait a whole week till I do. And then you'll be just as rude as ever. Eh, George? I hope not, don't you?